There are certain seasons in life when someone steps onto your path, and suddenly the notion of coincidence no longer feels believable. You can trace back the chain of events and try to make sense of how everything came to pass. But somewhere deep within, your gut already understands that logic was never truly at the helm. This person did not simply walk into your life. They arrived carrying a purposeful significance that felt written from the very first instant you crossed paths. When they showed up, something stirred inside you in a way that was gentle yet enduring in its effect on your spirit and your direction. Even now, as you try to press forward and persuade yourself that everything has concluded, there remains a pull that simply refuses to fade. As you attempt to think your way through the pain, something keeps drawing your mind back to them, time and time again. This is not desperation. It is the weight of something deeply familiar, something woven into your own path and personal story. If this message has reached you today, it is not by chance, because meaningful messages tend to arrive precisely when the soul is ready to receive them. Carl Jung once said that whoever looks outside dreams, while whoever looks within awakens to the truth of their own reality. Right now, something significant inside you is beginning to stir and perceive things as they genuinely are in this current moment. It is a form of inner certainty that refuses to stay quiet or be brushed aside by the rational mind as you attempt to keep moving. It is a sense that insists this bond was never meant to be easily forgotten or set aside like a common memory. You may have arrived at a place where you feel pulled in opposite directions between your thoughts and the choices you make each day. You feel suspended between clinging to what once existed and finally releasing the hopes you carried for so long. You are torn between trusting what your heart whispers and doubting yourself because of what your eyes can observe. Silence has a way of nourishing uncertainty, and distance can cause even the most grounded person to question what they sense deep inside. You may have asked yourself whether you imagined it all, or whether you were chasing a reality that never truly existed. You might believe you placed too much significance into something that held no real meaning. But imagination typically fades as time passes. Illusions tend to unravel when measured against reality and separation. Yet this bond has held steady despite the months gone by and the space between you. Your soul continues to hold this person close, and there is a meaningful reason for that which you are only now beginning to grasp. This person matters not in the way the ego craves, but in the way the soul recognizes someone who carries a significant role in growth and transformation. This is not obsession, because obsession is loud, pressing, and relentless. What you carry is quieter than that and far more layered. It lives beneath the surface of your awareness and patiently waits for the right moment to reveal its fuller meaning. It surfaces during still moments and in unexpected waves of emotion that seem to emerge from nowhere. Connections that genuinely transform us are never surface level. They rearrange something within us that once felt permanent and settled. They open passages that can never be fully sealed again, even across vast distances and long stretches of silence. Even now, they sense your presence more than they allow themselves to reveal. Some people carry deep emotions behind a composed exterior. Silence does not mean the feeling has gone. Often it means the feeling runs so deep that they do not know how to hold it. Their withdrawal is not evidence of indifference. It is often the fear of the openness that this connection demands of them at this chapter of their life. They fear surrendering control. They fear being witnessed at a depth they are not yet comfortable exposing. This is where many meaningful bonds begin to struggle, because one soul awakens more quickly than the other is prepared to. The other person retreats from the reflection being held up before them, and you became that reflection. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will guide your life and you will call it fate. Right now, they are being steered by things they have not yet confronted within themselves. But once a soul stirs awake, it never fully returns to its former sleep. You entered their life to remind them what emotional transparency feels like and what it means to be authentic with another person. You reached a place within them that had been quiet for a very long time. And that kind of impact does not simply dissolve. The universe does not squander meaningful encounters. And if this connection were truly finished, it would have ended with clarity and without lingering feelings. Instead, it continues to appear through subtle signs that catch your attention, and through dreams that feel more real than waking life. These are not distractions. They are gentle reminders urging you to trust what is unfolding beyond your present understanding. There is a difference between forcing a door open and knowing it will open on its own when the moment is right. Your hope is not a weakness. It is intuition, and intuition does not need to be spoken aloud in order to be known. At this very moment, something is stirring beneath the surface. The resistance is gently softening with every passing day. The heart that once shut itself away is beginning to yield to its own undeniable truth. Whether they acknowledge it or not, the thought of losing you entirely is becoming more unsettling than the prospect of trying once more. Patience becomes the gateway to joy when it stays steady and rooted. Trusting divine timing does not mean surrendering your self-respect. As this message settles inside you, notice what feels naturally true. Truth does not need to be forced upon you. If your heart grows more at ease rather than more unsettled, that is often a signal that you are headed in the right direction. The connection is not broken, it is evolving. And as it shifts, both of you are being shaped and refined by the experience. What you are moving through right now is not simply waiting. It is becoming. It is the process of growing into the person you were always destined to be. You may have noticed that ever since this connection arrived in your life, you are no longer the same individual you once were. Your emotional depth has expanded. Your boundaries have become more defined and more solid than they once were. You can no longer settle for shallow relationships or affection that only appears partway. Sometimes a connection does not arrive to stay from the very beginning. Sometimes it arrives to awaken you and reveal possibilities you never knew were available to you. And once that awakening unfolds, there is no returning to the version of yourself that came before. You cannot slip back into sleep after glimpsing what is possible. You cannot comfortably accept less than what your heart now recognizes as genuine. The person you were before this bond entered your life no longer experiences the world in the same way. You have absorbed lessons about yourself that could never have been learned through comfort alone. You have uncovered strengths you never knew you held. You have faced fears that once lay hidden beneath the surface. And even though the path has not always been smooth, every step has shaped you into someone wiser, more resilient, and more self-aware than before. That growth is not accidental. It is part of the deeper intention behind everything that has taken place. Whether this person returns tomorrow, next month, or further along the road, the transformation occurring within you right now holds its own value entirely. Nothing has been wasted. No feeling has been without meaning. No lesson has come without purpose. Everything is contributing to the unfolding story of who you are becoming. And perhaps that is the most profound gift this connection has offered you. Not simply the possibility of reunion, but the invitation to step more fully into yourself than you have ever done before. Releasing feels difficult because you are still holding a truth about yourself that was shaped through knowing this person. You discovered how deeply you are capable of feeling and how completely you can be emotionally present with another human being. Soul connections rarely travel in a straight line. They move in spirals and revisit the same lessons repeatedly, each time reaching a deeper layer than before. They call for greater honesty, more courage, and a firmer willingness to face who you are becoming in the present moment. What makes this feel so complex is not the absence of emotion, but the gap in timing and inner readiness between both of your journeys. You are open and willing to expand, while the other person is still moving through their internal fears, resistance, and personal healing. Unresolved connections do not simply vanish. They linger in the background and tend to resurface when life grows quiet and distractions fall away. In those still moments, late at night or early in the morning, you may become the silent point of reference they cannot help but measure other experiences against. Not because you are actively present, but because the emotional impression remains vivid within them. This is also why certain signs seem to keep showing up in your life. Not to keep you trapped in confusion, but to anchor you when doubt begins to creep in. When uncertainty enters your mind, something often appears to remind you that your feelings are not fabricated. There is a deeper shift taking place within you as you begin to understand the distinction between attachment and alignment in your emotional world. Attachment tells you that you need this person in order to feel whole or at peace. Alignment reminds you that you are already complete on your own, even without reassurance from anyone else. When you stop reaching for clarity and instead begin to embody it, the entire emotional dynamic starts to shift and the weight around your heart slowly releases. The connection is no longer fueled by anxiety, but by a steadier and more rooted presence that allows genuine possibility to emerge. This change is sensed on both sides, even without spoken words. You may notice that you are no longer waiting in the same restless way, and that internal shift transforms everything. At this point, the connection can no longer sustain itself on uncertainty alone. It becomes something that must be intentionally chosen. This is where fear begins to lose its hold on both of you. The awareness of what could be lost sharpens, and the heart begins to speak more powerfully than old defensive patterns. You chose growth, honesty, and inner integrity. And now the other person is standing at the threshold of a similar turning point. The direction is shifting. At times you may even sense a sudden wave of stillness or warmth that arrives without obvious cause, as though something between you is quietly adjusting in the background. Clarity is drawing near, and it will not ask you to diminish yourself or retreat into older versions of who you once were. Love in its most genuine form must be lived and expressed outwardly, not only carried silently within. That is why everything has settled into this more deliberate pace. If a return happens, it will arrive with real intention and accountability, meeting you in the clearer space you now inhabit in your life. If it does not, you will not crumble into the same emotional anguish as before, because you have already come back to your own inner truth and steadiness. You now understand the difference between chemistry and true compatibility, and also the difference between longing and genuine alignment. Whatever comes next will find you exactly where you are now, rooted in self-respect and emotional calm. Something is moving toward alignment, but it is not being pushed or hurried. It is unfolding in its own natural way. There comes a point when longing softens naturally into understanding, because your relationship with the situation itself begins to permanently change. You stop asking why this is happening to you, and begin to sense that it is happening for you. That shift carries enormous weight, because it marks the place where pain slowly starts to transform into wisdom, clarity, and emotional resilience. This connection has brought forward parts of you that were previously unseen. It has peeled away illusions and shown you the difference between intensity and true intimacy, and between attachment driven by fear and love grounded in truth. As this understanding roots itself more deeply within you, emotional suffering begins to lose its grip over your thoughts and daily inner state. Your thoughts of this person begin to change as well. They grow quieter, less turbulent, and more accepting of things as they genuinely are right now. When one person within a deep emotional bond grows, the entire dynamic naturally responds to that new inner state. Energy always seeks equilibrium. When you stop reaching for answers, things begin to shift in a different way. This change reaches the other person as well, as your presence arrives in a calmer and more settled form, rather than through emotional urgency or pressure. This can unsettle them far more than any pursuit ever could, because silence now carries significance. It is no longer received as rejection but as space that calls for self-examination and inner work. They are being brought face to face with their own patterns, the emotional walls they constructed, and the need for control that once served as protection. Those same defenses that once gave them safety are now standing in the way of deeper connection and emotional truth. Moving forward asks for vulnerability while staying fixed, means releasing something rare and meaningful. The outcome is not determined by how intensely you hope, but by how consistently you remain aligned with your own truth. The more you stay true to yourself, the more clearly the path reveals itself for both of you. Whether this leads to reunion or peaceful release, it will not undo you the way it once might have, because your inner foundation has already been transformed. There is still unresolved emotional meaning within this connection that calls for honesty in order to fully settle. Words that were never voiced and feelings that were never fully expressed do not simply disappear. They remain until there is sufficient courage to bring them into the open. Where fear lives, that is where your work becomes visible. At this moment, fear is present on both sides in different forms. Your part has been to honor your inner knowing, while their part is to open emotionally without sheltering behind old patterns of protection. Both paths are already in motion. The idea of reunion no longer carries desperation or restlessness. Instead, there is a growing preference for truth over illusion and depth over confusion. You are no longer willing to accept uncertainty dressed as destiny. You want clarity, presence, and emotional honesty. That inner standard itself is what is quietly summoning the other person forward to meet you at a more grounded level of connection. True emotional bonds do not exist to keep you locked in suffering. They exist to draw you back into alignment with your authentic self. You are stepping into that alignment now, and communication may begin to open in ways you did not anticipate. Allow things to unfold organically, rather than pressing for outcomes. Real reconnection cannot be hurried or controlled. If fear surfaces, let it move through without allowing it to steer your choices, because it is simply an old emotional echo. You are not the person you once were. You no longer require external validation to affirm your worth. Your value is already reflected in how far you have grown, and life responds to what you consistently embody. Pay attention to how your body feels. A sense of ease, openness, and loosened tension often signals that you are drawing closer to alignment with truth. What comes next is about allowing life to show you what is real and allowing love to find its rightful place. This connection is either rising into clarity or gently dissolving into understanding, but it is not yet fully complete. There is still movement ahead and a conversation that may arrive at the right moment when both sides are prepared. Stay grounded and present, because the next chapter will call for clarity, emotional resilience, and discernment. A quiet inner confidence begins to build when you no longer depend on outside reassurance to trust what you already feel within. You stop constantly searching for signs because something inside you has already settled into a more profound trust. This connection now serves as a mirror, reflecting who you are becoming rather than who you once were. You no longer feel the need to justify your emotions or defend your heart to anyone. Real love does not rely on confusion as evidence of its existence. Your inner stability reshapes everything around you. When you stop bending yourself out of shape to keep something alive, the connection must respond honestly to your transformed state of being. It either rises to meet you or reveals its boundaries. And both outcomes are forms of clarity. They feel this shift because the space you once filled with emotional effort is no longer the same. Your presence has become stiller, more transparent, and no longer carried by anxiety or uncertainty. This kind of presence draws hidden emotions upward, where they can no longer be avoided. They begin to feel the significance of what could be lost, and a sense of accountability slowly surfaces within them regarding their own choices. You chose growth and integrity, and now they stand at the threshold of a similar decision. The direction is shifting once more, and moments of quiet emotional closeness may begin to emerge even without spoken words. This is resonance. Distance may postpone expression, but it cannot erase the connection itself. Clarity is on its way, and it will not require you to abandon who you have grown into. Love must be lived through action, not only held in silence, which is precisely why everything has moved into a more intentional pace. Anything built upon an older level of awareness would have eventually fallen apart. But what is forming now carries the potential to be more lasting and true. If they return, it will be with sincerity, accountability, and a genuine willingness to meet you openly. If they do not, you will remain whole regardless, because you have already come back to yourself and to your own truth.